Good evening. You're on the smoking section with Donald Summerfield and Stephen Helfer. Don, thank you. Don, can I call you Don or do you like Donald?
You can call me Don. I prefer it.
You prefer Don? Oh, really? That's interesting. I somehow would have guessed that you preferred Donald, but Donald is, now see, there we go, Donald. Don is a resident of the Manning building here in Cambridge, and which is a public housing development, and is also what he calls himself as a civil rights advocate.
Civil rights advocate or activist.
Or activist.
Which spun out from a disability rights advocate.
Right, so you...
Which is essentially civil rights being protected.
All right, so you prefer the term civil rights advocate or activist as opposed to disabilities
Well, I do both, but I've broadened my activism from just being a disability rights advocate for protecting all folks' civil rights.
Right. And just before the program started, you were talking about that vis-a-vis smoking and tobacco, that this can get a little bit, in your view and in your inclination, your advocacy, a little complicated.
It can get quite complicated.
Can you speak a little louder?
Yeah.
And not, you don't have to scream, you're not screaming, but, and can you tell me just tell me a little bit about that, please.
Well, I feel the rights of folks to live peaceably, enjoy peaceably their meal, sitting on a park bench without secondhand smoke, but I also feel it's the right of a smoker to smoke.
Right.
And it's especially obtrusive when if you're a homeless person and you're on a park bench and you can't smoke. Essentially, that law could be aimed at that person who doesn't have a home, who does like to smoke.
Right, and
who would sit on a park bench.
And about, according to the statistics from the government, about 70% of homeless people smoke. That
is about right.
In your
From what I've learned.
And well, so you've got, well, I mean, a lot of our rights are conflicting, right, in society. I mean, it's not only smoke and smoking, you know. Like, for example, a lot of people would prefer to walk through Harvard Square and not be accosted by people asking for money. But then again, we do have a First Amendment in the United States, so people have a basic right to ask for money.
It's an interesting balance. I find it very intrusive to be accosted, I say accosted, every block I walk through in Harvard Square by someone wanting money.
Right.
And it's not just wanting money to live, but it's wanting money for a job.
What do you mean money for a job?
If someone is needing money because of a situation, they lost their job, they're homeless, possibly their disability doesn't allow them to work, that's a case where I would make to possibly give them money. But to give someone money just because that's their job to ask me money, really? I find that distasteful. Especially from someone who last year who had a placard out in front of you, I'm 3 months pregnant, or no, she said she's 7 months pregnant and she was never pregnant for the whole year.
Right. I mean, defrauding people.
That's objectionable.
Well, I mean, I walk through Harvard Square and it's hard for me. I try to give a little money every day, and it's hard for me to differentiate or discriminate. You know, do I give this person money when I think he's going to spend it on alcohol? Do I give this person money because I think he's too young? Do I think I give this person money because, you know, it's hard.
It's real hard. And it's especially hard for me walking through Central Square to discern that person who needs money to live or needs money to buy another Klonopin to get high.
Well, now, what do you think about the person who buys money for another Klonopin? Do you prefer not to, I mean, will you refuse to give that
I
person?
will refuse to give them money.
Okay, because it's not,
It's not up to me to support their habit.
now, you know, a lot of people who are homeless, now we'll get back to tobacco, for example, a lot of people who are in dire straits like tobacco.
Yes, the mentally ill have a high rate of smoking because of their disability and because of the meds that they take gives them the urge to smoke.
And according to most of the science, like particularly with schizophrenia, tobacco does ameliorate some of their symptoms.
It helps quell some of the voices they hear.
Well, now, so if someone is homeless and is begging for cigarettes money, would that be something you would not, or you would?
I would not condone that.
Why not? I mean, if the tobacco helps him quell some of the voices, help suppress his appetite, help kill
I'm kind of contradicting myself.
you don't have to be consistent. That's a hobgoblin, right? Consistency.
Yeah, I sometimes give money to those folks, but not all the time. I have to discern. I have to make that choice.
But why
Sometimes
wouldn't
that choice is so instantaneous as you're walking
Yeah.
by?
But why? I mean, for example, cigarettes don't intoxicate you. They don't make it impossible for you to work. They don't
Yeah.
make it difficult to drive a car. They don't make you beat up your spouse. They don't make you lie in the street with vomit coming out of your mouth. So why would you be disinclined to give someone money when he was going to use it for cigarettes?
Well, at the same time, I support some of their rights to smoke because of their situation. I don't feel it's up to me to support their habit or pay for it. Smoke, but not on my dime.
Right, right.
That's exactly what it is. You may smoke, but not on my dime.
Yeah.
I work too hard to give them money.
Well, I don't know, because for many people, tobacco, like for me, tobacco is a very, very important part of my life. You know, I have smoked all of my life, except for 6 years where I quit, and I expected to reap all kinds of benefits and didn't frankly notice any benefits at all, except that I was more restless, that I gained weight. Otherwise, I didn't notice any benefit whatsoever to quitting smoking for 6 years. But where am I going with this? Oh, well, I mean, tobacco is a very important part of my life, and I don't know why, you know, what would you want that person to do with the money? I mean, for example, buy a big gulp or something, or, you know, yeah, I mean, because it's, there's only so many things that yeah.
Possibly. I'd rather see them take that money and buy some food.
Right.
Or put it towards their next rent check.
Well, most of those people don't even, well, some do and some don't.
A good portion don't have a home.
Right, so they're not going to use it for the rent check, and
If the ones that are out there buying drugs might have a home, and I certainly don't want to give them money.
but I mean, to me, drugs are very different than tobacco.
They are. I'm just using that as a point.
So I'm trying to
They're quite different.
challenge your idea that, you know, I mean, of course, you have your right to give anybody or not give anybody money, but I would just, okay, the reason I say that is tobacco has been in the New World for 8,000 years, very much revered by the Native Americans, by American Indians. I don't like euphemisms. It's very calming, reduces appetite, does all kinds of things that are very helpful to people who are in very dire straits, either because of their minds or because of their circumstances, like if they don't have a home. You know, so why would you not let them smoke on your dime, as it were?
I don't have a really black and white answer except to say It's difficult for me for my position. It's a slippery slope.
Slippery slope, I don't get it. I mean, because you give them this tobacco and then next thing would be a Klonopin?
No, that I support someone's civil right to possibly smoke in certain areas, but I'm against smoking.
Okay, because you're convinced that of all the benefits smoking may have, or all the pleasures it may give, there's a bigger downside.
The downside is I don't like cigarette smoke. I don't like secondhand smoke.
Right.
I especially did not like it when my two neighbors beside me smoked, and I suffered immensely, especially in the wintertime when the windows were closed. Summertime, it still sucked.
Oh, really? Okay.
Excuse my
This was
language.
at Manning. This was
Yes.
at Manning.
Sorry for the SU word.
That's okay. That's okay. This
But
is.
it really was horrendous.
Yeah.
And in February, when it was closed tighter than a shoebox, it was very detrimental.
Intolerable.
It was intolerable.
Okay. And did you suffer any particular health consequences from your neighbor's secondhand smoke?
My asthma increased, my reactive airway disease increased, headaches.
Well, okay, let's say that's enough. Reactive airway disease, what is that?
Reactive airway is it's a reaction that's similar to asthma, but occasionally cigarette smoke brings that on.
But I mean, so it's very similar to asthma
Yeah.
we're talking here.
I'll show you an inhaler I use.
Oh, you don't have to. Look, I've seen plenty of inhalers. I mean, I'm not able to differentiate one from the other. Do you use it often or not so often?
Don't use it often.
Don't use it often.
But before the no smoking ordinance was in effect, I did use it.
But you were in a pretty unusual circumstance because I think approximately, maybe 25% at the most of public housing tenants smoke. So for a person to be living in a public housing and on either side of him.
I was the unlucky
Right, I mean, that's
75%.
Right, I mean, because, that's a pretty unusual, I mean, it's, for most people in public housing, by the law of averages, they're not going to be living next door to a smoker, much less a smoker on each side, right?
Well, actually, one.
I mean, you like won the
one
lottery,
was two
so to
doors
speak.
down, one was directly.
You kind of won the lottery or lost the lottery, as it were.
I won the lottery.
So why do you think it was that of all the public housing tenants in Cambridge, you, Donald Summerfield, were the only one to testify in front of the city council in favor of the ban?
One reason is I feel there were so many smokers that complained about the non-smoking ordinance coming into effect, and why weren't we on the healthier steering committee? But every public housing resident was sent a letter inviting them to be on the committee. So when there was a hearing that was announced, I felt it was my duty, because I was really sick of hearing about all these smokers telling me, well, why wasn't I on the healthy air steering committee? And I was.
But I'm asking,
So that's the reason.
when we spoke at the city council, you were the only representative of the non-smoking
Right,
faction.
that's my reason. I was so angry at these.
But why didn't any non-smokers show up there, or why didn't anybody else who is in the?
Why didn't anyone else show? I can't answer that. I can only answer why I showed up.
Right.
Which was your question.
And then, for example, also at the hearings that were at every building, which the Cambridge Housing Authority. By the
I
way.
should have an answer for you.
Okay, that's all right. No, your answer is good. I mean, honesty is the best answer, right?
Thank you.
Right? I don't know, Well, I mean, I agree with you 100%, by the way. I got very sick of people telling me, oh, nobody told me.
Yeah, well, everyone was told.
Right, the Cambridge Housing-
and CHA got a letter.
The Cambridge Housing Authority did everything I could see in their power to alert every resident in Cambridge Housing, and did everything in their power they could to get people to go to the hearings, not the hearings, but the meetings. So they, I believe, acted in good faith in that regard. In that regard, not in every regard, but in that regard. I mean, totally, I think first of all, I think that they knew they were going to ban smoking from the get-go, so I think a lot of that was just a charade.
I think that's a big reason why they never bothered to come into the committee.
You mean the smokers?
The smoke.
Right, yeah, right. But nonetheless, I mean, so you mean you think that the smokers felt it was a done deal?
Yeah, they thought it was a done deal.
Well, that's often an excuse for people not taking political action. They, 40% of them say it's never going to happen, so there's no point in showing up. And the other 40% say it's going to happen no matter what, so they don't show up. So then you lose the
So
pool.
why not? They don't want my opinion anyway, is the type of opinion that was rendered after the fact.
Right, but we gave them a good run for their money.
We did, but there's something we need to announce. People only guessing, or they assume that I was on the Healthy Air Steering Committee, but you never asked me if I was, and yes, I was.
Right. I mean, yeah,
I'm just being particular here by saying what I said.
Well, so you showed up. Now, one thing that you said at the public council hearing, the city council hearing, is that, that you referenced the Surgeon General acting as, like, how could people like me, question the Surgeon General? Now, I'll just give you one example. In the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention on their website, on one part of the website, it says secondhand smoke contains 7,000 chemicals, 7,000 constituents. Another part of the CDC website, it says it has 4,000.
So what do you believe?
Well, I mean, what that appears to me is that, first of all, they've never counted the number, that this is basically a propagandistic way of scaring people, and that the Surgeon General, like any other government official, can be questioned even by a layperson. So, did you want to retract what you said in the city council?
I don't remember my exact words, so I won't retract it.
But I mean, certainly we should not accept the Surgeon General's word as gospel.
Oh. As gospel?
Yes.
I guess we shouldn't. Only if there is a discrepancy, if it really is 4,000 or 7,000.
Well, I don't think it's either of those numbers, because I don't think anyone's ever counted. I think simply the CDC is making this kind of stuff up. I mean,
I don't think they're making it up. I don't think someone was counting up the numbers correctly for one.
Well, one is 4,000, one is 7,000, and well, I think.
No, I totally disagree. They wouldn't make that up.
Well, they probably don't make it up out of whole cloth, but I think if you asked them to reference how they know this number, I think they would find it somewhat difficult to really come up with it. And then they would say, what difference does it make? It has a lot of. See, what the CDC doesn't tell you is that, if you sit around a campfire, for example, burning wood will have X thousand chemicals, or if you, are like, for example, if you sit here in this room as
but
we are.
They do say that when you burn fires in your house, they say you can breathe toxic chemicals.
Right, they do say that, but for example, what I'm saying is they use numbers in a way that is inherently misleading. For example, there is no secondhand smoke in this room. There's no campfire smoke. There is no, I'm not wearing perfume, you're not wearing perfume,
Yeah.
at least none that I can detect. But in this air, there's, depending on, are you talking about a square centimeter or a square millimeter, there's going to be thousands of chemicals, because these days we have the ability to measure things so incredibly small that when you say secondhand smoke has 4,000 chemicals, well, air has just air with no secondhand smoke, and it probably has several thousand chemicals. So of course, secondhand smoke is. Do you see how I'm trying to show how even if that these things are inherently misleading.
I can also see your point, because the federal government doesn't always tell us the truth. I.e., they once said DDT was safe.
Oh, right. Well, they may have believed it at the time.
Well, I really think they just didn't tell us the whole truth.
Or didn't do their homework, as they say.
Or didn't do their homework?
Right.
Or both? I think it was both.
Well, I mean, it's one thing, a good smokers' rights advocate named Michael McFadden, showed that after the Twin Towers fell in New York, there was this cloud.
Yeah.
This cloud that spread everywhere in Manhattan. And the EPA said that this really posed very little danger.
Oh, but then they said yes.
Maybe they changed. I don't know. But at the second time, like a whiff of secondhand smoke is deadly, So, I mean, these are kinds of things that, the EPA, FDA, Surgeon General, CDC, they can be impeached on, let's say.
Yeah.
So that's why it kind of stuck in my craw. Your
Do you have my testimony written down?
No, I do not, but I do remember it. I remember it because you were singular.
Yes, I got a lot of flack for it.
Oh, come on, from whom?
I won't mention people.
But they didn't threaten. No, not serious flack.
There was no threats, but
No serious flack.
No, there was just verbal flack.
Well, there are people in public housing who feel,
But was never threatened.
who are non-smokers, who feel the smoking ban they feel that people in public housing are restricted enough, and this is another restriction. And they feel it, do you think that argument has merit?
You want to repeat that again?
People, non-smokers who oppose the ban in public housing said, they said they were non-smokers, but they felt that people who live in public housing face enough restrictions on their, their choices in life and how they live, and particularly where they live, so that introducing another restriction, now you can't smoke in your house and you can't let a guest smoke in your house.
I never got that.
Oh, there is a good number of people.
Well,
who
no,
do.
I never really was. I never was privy to that.
Privy to that argument?
Yeah.
Well, let's say that argument was made. Do you think that argument has merit?
Yeah.
You do?
I do. I do. That's where the slippery slope is again.
And that's where the conflict of rights comes up.
Yeah.
Sometimes our rights,
But it's my right to enjoy my home is greater.
All right, we now have a telephone call.
Okay.
You ready?
Ready.
Let's see what we got. You're on the smoking section. If I get it right. Looks like. Hello? I guess we didn't get it, unfortunately. Let me just see. I don't get enough phone calls to get my practice up here with all the buttons. We live in a world where there are buttons everywhere.
Yeah.
Now, did you grow up in a smoking household?
I did.
And
Both my mom and dad smoked.
And did you find that unpleasant?
When I was a child, no.
You didn't?
No, I did not.
I find that curious. Like, for example, I grew up, before I was 7 in a very heavy, well, not heavy, but smoke everywhere.
It was just so commonplace. It was just part of our environment.
Right, but so, meaning that part of it is that you were used to it, so it didn't bother you.
Yeah.
So, like, you didn't cough a lot.
I might have, but it wasn't in my foreground.
And your eyes didn't bother you? You didn't say,
Possibly they did, but I don't
you don't remember, but you probably would remember. And so you grew up in a smoking household, and would your parents smoke in the car with you?
Yeah.
Right, and that
They
did,
smoke more in the house.
but it didn't
It's
like,
actually something I look forward to, watching and smelling my father's cigarette smoke.
is that right, really?
My mom smoked, but she quit before my dad.
And did your father quit eventually?
Yeah.
And is there a certain point in your life where you begin not to like secondhand smoke?
It got, I'm guessing in my 20s.
In your 20s?
Yeah.
Then you begin to dislike secondhand
Yeah.
smoke?
Immensely.
Immensely? Oh my gosh,
Immensely.
really?
If there's a good amount of ventilation, not so much problem. If there's no ventilation, it makes me ill.
Yeah, well, here is an argument that's an interesting argument.
But I can also endure secondhand smoke. Might not like it, but I can endure it.
Right, if you have something to gain from being with someone who's a secondhand smoker,
Definitely.
like a good laugh, for example.
Yeah.
Right. Do you think the atmosphere in bars and nightclubs, I know that now you can go into a nightclub and your clothes won't smell of smoke, and that's wonderful. But I mean, do you think, given that the smoking somehow kind of got people more relaxed and maybe more sociable and perhaps not so concerned about, how long they can live, but maybe just enjoy their life while they have it? Do you think since, all the bands and the bars and let's see if we can get this call. All right, you're on the smoking section.
Hi, Steve. How are you?
Hey, Jim, you're calling too late. We've got 15 seconds left. Say your piece.
Well, I like your guest.
Donald Summerfield, thank you very much.
Bye, Jim. Bye, Jim.
And thanks for watching the smoking section.